She is not a champion tonight. She is a saleswoman. And by the time the final second of this breakdown lands, that sentence is going to sit in your chest heavier than any belt Claressa Shields has ever strapped around her waist. So before we cut to the bone of what actually happened between Claressa Shields and Cashh Rock inside that gym in Florida, before we peel back the paint on the August 15th card at State Farm Arena, before we drag every receipt into the light where the ponytail apologists cannot hide them, I want you to do one thing for me. Slap that like button so hard the algorithm feels it in Atlanta. Subscribe because what you are about to hear is not going to be safe on the front page for long. And drop the word "caught" in the comments if you already smell what the whole culture is smelling, because this one is a movie, and unlike the woman selling the ticket, I am not going to have to pay anybody to say that. This is not a hit piece. This is not a hater column. This is a forensic walkthrough of the strangest promotional collapse women's boxing has produced in a decade, and I am going to lay it out plank by plank until the whole staircase is visible. Now hear me out, because the story that the ponytail industrial complex wants you to swallow is that Claressa Shields is the greatest woman fighter alive, the self-anointed GWOAT, the queen of the ring, the face that sells the sport, the crossover superstar the boxing world has been waiting a generation for. That is the campaign. That is the polish. That is the paid infomercial they run every time she walks into a room with a camera. But the receipts, the seat charts, the tape from that gym, and the cadence of every desperate promo the champion has stitched together in the past 2 weeks tell a completely different story. And the story is this. The tickets are not moving. The building is a sea of blue empties on Ticketmaster. And the woman who calls herself the greatest is now leaning on a reality television personality with a lace front and a fan base to drag a fight card across the finish line. And the whole play is so transparent that even the casuals in the chat clocked it in real time. Not the analysts. Not the insiders. The casuals. When the casuals catch you, the operation is already sinking, and no amount of press release polish is going to lift it back to the waterline. Let me lay the timeline on the floor exactly the way it happened, because timelines do not lie, and the ponytail apologists cannot rewrite them no matter how many finger waves get thrown from the caboose corner. Claressa Shields has a fight booked for August 15th at State Farm Arena in Atlanta, Georgia. Tickets sitting on Ticketmaster right now, streaming live, headline slot, the whole treatment. Claressa Shields is dropping down in weight, chasing another belt, running the same speech she has run for a decade about being champion at 154, 160, 168, 175, 175 plus. And in the middle of all that, Claressa Shields shows up in a gym video with Cashh Rock, hugging her like they are lifelong sisters, laughing on camera, promoting the card, promoting the moment, promoting the movie. And the internet, in its infinite wisdom, saw straight through it in about 8 seconds flat. There was no confusion. There was no delay. There was no debate. The frame landed, the internet exhaled, and every commenter in the country reached for the same word at the same time. Staged. Because Cashh Rock, in the middle of that same gym visit, had to ask when the fight actually was. She did not know. She could not name the date without prompting. The alleged best friend of the champion for this 2-week promotional cycle needed the champion to feed her the date on camera. Nothing tells you that a friendship is manufactured faster than one party in the friendship not knowing the single most important fact about the other party's life that week. And this is where the whole ponytail industrial complex starts collapsing under its own weight, because you do not have to be a boxing analyst to catch this. You just have to have functioning eyes. It is the kind of tell a rookie promoter would flag on the way to the parking lot, and yet the entire team greenlit the clip and pushed it live because the desperation was louder than the discipline. When desperation is louder than discipline, the operation stops being a promotion and starts being a public bleed. Now let me tell you something about the star power test in this industry, because Claressa Shields does not pass it, no matter how many times she calls herself the greatest. When a real star sits at the top of a card, tickets are gone before the presser ends. When LeBron James signs with a franchise, the schedule gets rewritten around him. When Jay-Z books a stadium, the crowd rushes the gate so hard the show gets delayed for hours, and the man himself has to come out and calm the building down. That is what star power actually looks like. That is what selling out actually looks like. When you have to fly a reality star into your gym to hug you on camera because your paper is not moving, that is not star power. That is a rescue mission. That is a bailout. That is the floor beneath the floor of what a supposed GWOAT should ever be caught doing. Real stars do not send out flares. Real stars are the light. And when the light has to borrow a candle, the room has already gone dark. And this is where I have to slow down and give you the receipt on the receipt, because the champion has been building this ticket shortage cover story for weeks without realizing every excuse she runs deepens the hole. She tells anybody who will listen that when she fights, it is dressed up, it is glamorous, it is a whole event, the crowd loves her, the arena worships her, the walkout is a spectacle. But if the crowd loves her the way she insists the crowd loves her, then the seat chart on Ticketmaster would not look like the Atlantic Ocean at midnight. And the seat chart does look like the Atlantic Ocean at midnight. Go look for yourself right now. Pull it up on your phone. The blue is loud. The blue is unforgiving. The blue is telling the truth that Claressa Shields will not. You can shoot 50 promo reels a week. The seat map is still the seat map. You can hire 50 influencers to smile in the background. The seat map does not blink. So the question every honest observer has to ask is this. If Claressa Shields is the biggest name in women's boxing, why is she the one begging for the cosign? Why is she the one showing up in Cashh Rock's orbit instead of Cashh Rock showing up in hers? Why is the alleged queen leaning on a Zeus Network personality to move paper for a world title fight? And the answer, if you have the courage to say it out loud, is that the crown has been paper the whole time, and the wind finally started blowing. There is no elegant way to say that. There is no soft landing for that sentence. It just is what it is, and the tape backs it, and the seat map backs it, and the culture backs it. The evidence is not hiding in a private folder somewhere. The evidence is on a public commerce page anybody in the world can load in 5 seconds. Let me get into the mechanics of the setup because the mechanics matter. The industry play here is not subtle. When a fight card is not moving units, promoters bring in cultural amplifiers. That is a real thing. That is standard practice. Boxing has done it forever. What is different in this case is that the woman on top of the poster spent years positioning herself as the amplifier, not the one who needs amplification. She told us for a decade that she was the crossover. She was the culture bridge. She was the one bringing the eyeballs. And now here she comes, cap in hand, walking a reality star into a gym for a hug that had all the organic warmth of a corporate handshake. The play is so obvious that even the casuals started running the tape back. Nobody thought that meetup was real. Nobody. Not one honest set of eyes on the internet looked at that footage and said, yes, that is two friends catching up. Every single reasonable viewer said the same thing at the same time. That is a check-clearing hug. That is an appearance fee in a tank top. That is a paid ad in a gym mirror. Slow the video down and you can almost see the invoice. And Cashh Rock, to her credit or her detriment depending on how you look at it, did not even bother selling it. She delivered the promo like a woman reading a cue card for the first time. She did not know the date. She did not know the venue rhythm. She did not know the undercard names. She knew one thing and one thing only, and that thing was that a bag was on the table and the bag needed a smiling face. So she smiled. She hugged. She posted. And the internet, unfortunately for Claressa Shields, watched the whole transaction happen in high definition. Once the culture has watched a transaction happen, no amount of retroactive spin can unwatch it. That is why smart promoters vet the cosign before they light the studio. The vetting was skipped. The lighting went up anyway. The receipt walked itself onto the internet. Now here is where every string ties together, and this is the part the ponytail apologists really do not want to sit through. If Claressa Shields and Cashh Rock had been so close for so long, where was the champion when Cashh Rock was climbing into the ring for her own fights? Where was the reciprocity? Where was the video of the champion flying out to Cashh Rock's gym, hugging her on camera, boosting her card? It does not exist. It has never existed. The relationship is one-directional, and it is one-directional because it is not a relationship. It is a contract. It is a service agreement. It is an appearance in the shape of a friendship, and the shape does not hold up under a single second of scrutiny. Real friendships in this sport leave fingerprints everywhere. This one leaves fingerprints only when the invoice clears. Real friendships have birthday posts. Real friendships have DM screenshots. Real friendships have shared tables at industry dinners. This one has one gym clip, one kick stream, one weekend of overlap, and then radio silence in both directions for every previous chapter of both careers. And this is the part where Claressa Shields committed the unforced error, the one she cannot walk back, the one that turned this whole promo cycle into a public correction moment. Because on that same live stream, on that same camera, she decided to speak on Cashh Rock's relationship. She told Cashh Rock that Cashh Rock needed to step back from her situation. On a first real meeting with this woman, in front of thousands of live viewers, she chose to reach into somebody else's personal life and rearrange the furniture. And the chat, the beautiful, undefeated, receipt-keeping chat, exploded in real time because everyone on planet Earth understood the irony that she somehow did not. The chat did not need a producer to tell it what to think. The chat had a producer inside every single viewer's head. And the verdict came back the second the sentence left her mouth. Because the woman lecturing another woman about who to leave alone is a woman who has spent an entire chapter of her own life entangled with a man everyone in the culture has questions about. The woman calling for boundaries in someone else's love life is the woman whose own relationship has become a running joke in the chat, in the diss tracks, in the memes, in the timelines, in the podcast circuits, in every corner of the internet where the culture actually lives. And she sat there and delivered advice with a straight face like the mirror in her house has been broken for a year. You cannot audit someone else's kitchen when the smoke alarm in your own kitchen has been chirping for months. You cannot play judge on someone else's love life while the jury on your own love life has been in deliberation for a decade. This is the hypocrisy the ponytail industrial complex cannot survive. Because you cannot campaign for the crown of women's boxing while simultaneously turning your promo tour into a talk show where you dispense guidance on other people's marriages. You cannot demand to be treated as an athlete of historic weight while behaving like a supporting cast member on a Zeus reality series. You cannot ask the culture to salute you as the greatest while simultaneously begging the culture's reality stars to co-sign your ticket sales. The two identities cancel each other out, and when they cancel each other out, what is left is exactly what we are watching in real time, which is a promotional collapse dressed up in a lace front. The champion is trying to wear two crowns at once, and both of them are slipping, and the slippage is showing up on the seat chart in real time. Let me pull one more thread, because this thread is the one that turns the whole tapestry inside out. Claressa Shields, in a recent sit-down interview, told everybody in earshot that she has been doing the same thing for 20 years, and she does not want people copying the blueprint. She warned the world that the imitators are out there and she is watching them. 20 years of doing the same thing. That was the quote. That was the flex. And yet, in the same breath, Claressa Shields has now been publicly documented borrowing, imitating, echoing, or outright lifting stylistic beats from an entire roster of other athletes and personalities. The one-legged pose from the WNBA sideline photography. The cornrow patterns Cashh Rock herself has been rocking. The stage presentation that other fighters built long before she adopted it. The blueprint apparently has been running in every direction except forward. The blueprint has been open source since day one, and now the author of the blueprint is trying to file a copyright on the corners she borrowed last. And the culture caught that too. The culture always catches it. Because the culture has receipts folders longer than any promoter contract, and every time she debuts a new look or a new pose or a new cadence, somebody on the timeline pulls up the original within an hour. That is not a hater problem. That is a documentation problem. And the documentation says what the documentation says. There is no lawyer for the timeline. There is no injunction that can quiet a side-by-side. Once the receipts start stacking, the receipts start stacking. And the culture stacks receipts faster than any archivist in publishing ever could. Now let me pivot to the fight itself, because at some point we do owe the sport its own paragraph. The August 15th card at State Farm Arena is, on paper, a real event. Streaming live. Real title implications. Real fighters on the undercard. Real weigh-in. Real everything. And the tragedy at this exact moment is that Claressa Shields could have let the boxing carry the promotion. She could have shown up quietly, sharpened the tools, walked in on August 15th, dropped an opponent, and let the highlights do the selling for the next card. That is what greats do. That is what belt holders do. That is what the LeBron James of women's boxing would do if the LeBron James of women's boxing actually existed inside her the way she insists it does. The tape would carry itself. The knockout would recycle for a month. The headline would write itself. The star would appear on cue because the star would have earned the entrance the old-fashioned way, which is with the hardware, the highlight, and the humility to let the moment speak first. Instead, Claressa Shields turned the promo cycle into a variety show. She turned a title defense into a Zeus Network crossover episode. She turned an August 15th headline into a running audition for cultural relevance. And when the fight actually happens, when the bell rings, when the walkout music plays, half the discourse is not going to be about her the boxer. Half the discourse is going to be about her the drama, her the ticket beg, her the friendship for hire arrangement, her the woman who lectured another woman on live stream about a relationship while her own relationship was trending in 3 different comment sections. That is not a coincidence. That is a self-inflicted narrative wound. And self-inflicted narrative wounds are the only kind that do not heal, because there is no external villain to blame, no rival to point at, no scapegoat to redirect the anger toward. And that is the tragedy of the ponytail industrial complex, because Claressa Shields is not without ability. She has real hardware. She has multi-division titles. She has Olympic gold. She has an actual boxing resume that, on the merits, is one of the strongest in the sport's history. But she cannot stop stepping on her own resume. She cannot stop turning every mic into a self-inflicted wound. She cannot stop treating the promotional platform as a personal grievance kiosk. And a resume, no matter how strong, cannot survive a decade of the athlete who owns it lighting matches at its foundation. Every generation of fighter has a version of this cautionary tale, and every generation the next fighter watches it happen anyway. The pattern repeats because the pattern is human, and the human under the pattern refuses to see the smoke. And here is the moment where I have to talk to you directly, because you are the reason this conversation is even happening. You, the culture, are the reason we can see the play in real time. You are the reason the gym meetup got flagged. You are the reason the Ticketmaster seat chart went viral before the promoter's rebuttal even loaded. You are the reason the 20-year quote is being sliced up against every side-by-side photo comparison the timeline can generate. And Claressa Shields hates that. She hates it because for the first time in a long run, the culture is not obeying the campaign. The culture is not repeating the talking points. The culture is not defending the brand. The culture is doing what the culture does best, which is watch, notice, and remember. That is the muscle no promoter can buy. That is the reflex no publicist can silence. That is the audit no marketing agency can hack. The ponytail apologists will show up in the comment section of this very video and try to reframe the narrative. They will tell you the tickets are moving. They will tell you the meetup was organic. They will tell you the 20-year quote was misinterpreted. They will tell you the relationship advice was a joke and you took it wrong. That is the entire Wig Defense Squad playbook, and it always runs the same set of plays, and it always fails for the same reason. The plays are not designed to convince anyone. The plays are designed to muddy the water long enough for the news cycle to move on. But this news cycle is not moving on, because Claressa Shields keeps giving the news cycle new fuel every single week. Every live stream is a new brick. Every interview is a new receipt. Every promo cycle is a new page in the file. And the file is starting to look less like a marketing folder and more like an evidence binder. Let me be specific about the seat chart, because the seat chart is the smoking gun of this entire operation. If you pull up the Ticketmaster page for the August 15th card at State Farm Arena and you look at the color-coded availability, what you are looking at is a public confession of promotional distress. The lower bowl still has open premium blocks. The mezzanine has visible chunks. The upper deck has entire rows untouched. This is not what a sold-out event looks like. This is not what a supposed generational star's headline defense looks like. This is what a promoter's nightmare looks like. And it is why an unscheduled reality television friendship materialized in a Florida gym at exactly the moment the promoters needed a viral moment to move paper. The correlation is not a mystery. The correlation is a timeline. And the timeline is public, time-stamped, and screenshotted in 1,000 different quote tweets. And Claressa Shields cannot admit any of this, because admitting it would collapse the entire brand mythology she has spent a decade building. So she does the only thing she knows how to do, which is talk louder. When the seat chart shows empties, she talks about how the walkout is going to be a movie. When the meetup gets clocked as staged, she talks about the movie again. When the culture calls out the 20-year copy quote, she talks about the movie again. The movie, the movie, the movie. It is the only word in the promotional dictionary, and the word has been used so many times it no longer means anything. If the fight was really the movie, we would not have to hear about it every 3 sentences. Nobody had to remind us that Jay-Z at Yankee Stadium was going to be a movie. The doors got rushed. The security had to hold the line. The show got delayed. That is what a movie actually looks like. What Claressa Shields is running is a trailer for a movie that keeps getting pushed back because the studio cannot find an audience. And this is where the undercard rumor becomes interesting, because the whisper going through the boxing community right now is that the promoters have quietly upgraded the undercard to include actual professional boxers on shorter notice, precisely because the celebrity-flavored version of the card was not moving units. That is a huge tell. That is the industry equivalent of a restaurant swapping the menu at the last minute because the reservations are not filling the room. It is a good sign for the sport, actually, because it means the fights themselves are going to be watchable. But it is a devastating sign for the champion's brand, because it means the promoters no longer believe that Claressa Shields alone can carry the arithmetic of an arena that size. When your own promoter has to spike the drinks, you have already lost the room. When your own promoter has to import extra fighters to convince the public the card is worth the price, you are not the headliner anymore. You are the placeholder while the placeholders do the heavy lifting. Let me put a bow on the Cashh Rock piece before we ride into the closing turn, because Cashh Rock deserves a paragraph of her own honest analysis. Cashh Rock is a reality television personality who transitioned into combat sports through the Zeus Network pipeline. She has a genuine fan base that finds her entertaining. She has real cultural pull inside a very specific demographic. She is not a boxer in the traditional sense, but she is a name, and a name in this era of the sport is currency. The problem is not Cashh Rock. Cashh Rock did nothing wrong by accepting the assignment. The problem is Claressa Shields being in a promotional position where the assignment even needed to exist. A generational champion should never need a Zeus Network amplifier to move a headline title defense. Ever. Under any circumstance. And the fact that this assignment exists is the loudest possible argument that the generational champion framing has always been a marketing exercise rather than a market reality. And here is the deeper cut. Cashh Rock's sister is also on the August 15th undercard. So this was not a single hire promo pull. This was a family package. The promoters wanted the whole ecosystem. They wanted both sisters. They wanted the reality television audience. They wanted the Zeus Network overlap. They wanted the Kick livestream reach. They needed every eyeball they could pull because the eyeballs Claressa Shields was supposed to bring on her own were not arriving. That is the entire operation in one sentence. She did not bring the eyeballs. She had to rent them. And when you have to rent, you have to admit, at least to yourself in the mirror, that the ownership deed was always ceremonial. And ceremonial ownership evaporates the moment the market stops clapping on cue. And when a self-proclaimed GWOAT has to rent an audience, the title of GWOAT is over. It is over the same way an emperor's parade is over the moment somebody in the crowd points out the emperor's outfit. And the culture has been pointing. And the pointing is not stopping. And the diss tracks keep dropping. And the timelines keep spinning. And the chat, that beautiful chat, keeps clocking every wig, every finger wave, every borrowed pose, every recycled quote. And Claressa Shields keeps waking up in the middle of the night worried about what the chat is saying, because the chat is the last honest room left on the internet and the chat has already delivered its verdict. There is no verdict harder to appeal than the one the internet delivers unanimously in real time. I want to close by returning to the seat chart, because the seat chart is the only witness in this case that cannot be paid off. You can pay a reality star for a gym visit. You can pay a promoter for a favorable press quote. You can pay a podcast for a soft interview. You can pay a stylist to keep the wig lifted. You can pay a photographer to get the pose exactly right. But you cannot pay the seat chart to fill itself. The seat chart is going to sit there on Ticketmaster showing whatever it shows, and on the morning of August 15th, the arena is going to open its doors and the arena is going to look like whatever the arena looks like, and no amount of GWOAT campaigning is going to change the geometry of an empty seat. The geometry is the geometry. The chair is either occupied or it is not. So here is what to watch for on August 15th. Watch the wide shots. Watch the upper deck. Watch the corners of the lower bowl during the walkout. Watch the crowd reaction on the ring announcement. Watch the volume of the boo relative to the volume of the cheer. And watch, most of all, what Claressa Shields says in the post-fight microphone, because the post-fight microphone is where the truth always comes out. If she wins, watch whether she uses the moment to call out the next challenger or uses the moment to complain about the doubters one more time. If she loses, watch the excuses come out in real time in a rhythm the culture has now cataloged for a decade. And no matter what happens in the ring, watch the seat charts afterlife, watch the resale market, watch the pay-per-view number if that number ever gets released, because those numbers do not lie and those numbers are going to tell you exactly how much of the GWOAT brand was real and how much of it was rented. Let me stack a few more receipts on the pile before we ride out, because a real breakdown does not leave meat on the bone. Consider the language used inside the gym on the day of the meetup. Consider the way Claressa Shields kept pivoting the conversation back to herself even when the guests tried to talk about her own upcoming assignments. Consider the way she introduced her fight date as if it were a news bulletin the entire building had somehow missed. Consider the way she narrated her own greatness in real time, as if the greatness would not narrate itself if it were real. Great fighters do not need to translate their own legend out loud. Great fighters let the record speak in the third person while they stay in the first. What we watched inside that gym was the opposite of that. What we watched was a fighter narrating herself into existence because the record was no longer loud enough to do the work. Consider also the way the kick stream that day handled the moment. The chat scrolled faster than any moderator could contain. The reactions were not soft. The reactions were not confused. The reactions were unanimous. And a unanimous chat is a canary in a coal mine every promoter in the country should have flagged before the clip was cut. When an audience answers a promotional beat with one voice, and that voice is skepticism, the promotional beat has failed. And the correct response is to pivot the entire strategy, not to double down on it. The ponytail industrial complex chose to double down. And the doubling down is why we are 3 weeks deep into a rolling reputational bleed with no tourniquet in sight. Consider the diss tracks that have been dropping across independent artist channels for months. Consider the volume of them. Consider the variety of them. Consider the fact that they no longer even need a hook to land, because the audience has already accepted the premise. When a diss track can skip its own setup because the target has done the setup for the artist, the target has lost the framing war. That is where Claressa Shields sits right now. Every artist who wants a viral clip has a free target, and the free target keeps generating fresh material every single week. Consider the finger wave. That is not a small detail. That is a cultural artifact at this point. The finger wave from the corner has become a shorthand for the entire operation, and every time it happens on camera the internet turns it into another meme, and every meme turns into another impression, and every impression turns into another data point in the file that follows Claressa Shields for the rest of the promotional cycle. This is what happens when the brand has zero self-awareness. Small gestures become large indictments. Casual habits become recurring evidence. And the champion is going to have to answer for every one of them on camera, one interview at a time, for as long as the August 15th cycle continues to breathe. Consider also the timing of the promotional pivot. The Cashh Rock meetup did not happen in month 1 of the promo cycle. It did not happen in month 2. It happened in the final stretch once the numbers were already public, once the Ticketmaster seat chart had already told its story, once the pay-per-view predictions had already started to soften. That timing is the entire confession. If the cycle had been going well, the meetup would not have been necessary. The meetup is a distress signal in the shape of a photo op, and every honest observer in the sport is reading it exactly the way it was written. The timing is the tell. The timing is always the tell. Consider what this moment is going to look like in the retrospective docs that get made about women's boxing 5 years from now. Claressa Shields is a Hall of Fame lock on athletic merit. Nobody is disputing that. The tape is the tape. The knockouts are the knockouts. The medals are the medals. But the promotional arc, the personality arc, the culture management arc, that is where the retrospective is going to sting. Because the retrospective is going to have to include the Cashh Rock hug. It is going to have to include the seat chart. It is going to have to include the 20-year quote. It is going to have to include the finger wave. It is going to have to include the livestream relationship lecture. All of it is going into the record, and the record is permanent, and no future publicist can scrub it clean. Consider one more angle before we ride out on this stretch because it matters. Boxing history rewards the fighter who lets the sport do the talking. Boxing history punishes the fighter who talks over the sport. Every era has a champion who tried to outrun that rule, and every era has a champion who paid the interest on that debt for the rest of their career. Claressa Shields is standing at the intersection of those two roads right now, and the road she has chosen to run is the one that shows up in every retrospective as a warning sign for the next generation. There is still time to change lanes. There is still time to let the August 15th performance itself become the headline. But the exits are getting fewer, and the drift is getting harder to correct at speed. And that is the whole story. A champion who forgot that greatness sells itself. A promoter who tried to plug a leaking arena with reality television star power. A meetup that fooled nobody. A quote about 20 years of the same thing that turned into a decade of documented imitation. A relationship advice moment that turned into a public correction from the entire culture. A seat chart that will not lie no matter how loud the promo runs. And a fight card that, if we are being honest with each other, is going to happen anyway, is going to have real punches thrown, is going to declare a real winner, and is going to close a real chapter in the strangest promotional collapse women's boxing has seen in years. Claressa Shields wanted the crown. She chased the crown. She caught the crown. And then Claressa Shields spent every single day since that catch giving the culture reasons to snatch the crown back. That is the tragedy. That is the whole tragedy. And no amount of Cashh Rock hugs, no amount of finger waves from the corner, no amount of pre-fight movie talk is going to rewrite the tape that the culture has already watched, already rewound, already screenshotted, already memed, already turned into the receipt folder that is going to follow the woman on the poster for the rest of her career. Legacies survive scandals when the scandal is external. Legacies collapse when the scandal is self-authored. And this scandal, from the first hug to the last finger wave, is entirely self-authored. If you made it all the way to this point, you are the reason we still get to have these honest conversations, so drop the word crown in the comments if you want part 2 of this breakdown covering the undercard. Tag one person in your circle who still thinks the meetup was organic, and hit that subscribe button because the August 15th fallout is coming and you do not want to miss the walkthrough of every wide shot from that arena. The game is over. The Ponytail Industrial Complex has been named, tagged, and filed. And the tape, unlike the tickets, is going to be sold out for a long, long time. See you on the other side of August 15th, where the receipts and the seat map are going to finish this conversation for us, one empty chair at a time, one uncomfortable wide shot at a time, one honest headline at a time. One last honest word before the outro plays, because you deserve a sober close to a heavy breakdown. Nothing in this analysis has been personal for the sake of personal. Nothing here has been petty for the sake of petty. Every line lands where it lands because the tape lands where the tape lands, and the tape is not editable after the fact. The Cashh Rock hug is on the tape. The date question moment is on the tape. The relationship lecture is on the tape. The 20-year quote is on the tape. The finger wave is on the tape. The Ticketmaster color block is on the seat chart in real time. All of it exists outside of my commentary, outside of your reaction, outside of any single podcast take that will come out of this cycle. It exists in the historical record of the sport, and the historical record does not accept revisions from the party being recorded. And that is the difference between honest criticism and drive-by hate. Honest criticism cites the tape. Drive-by hate invents the tape. Everything you have heard in this breakdown is sourced, timestamped, and cross-referenced against publicly available material any viewer can verify with a phone and 30 seconds of patience. If a single ponytail apologist wants to challenge a single claim here on the merits, the invitation is open, the comment section is unlocked, the receipts are ready to be traded in daylight. So take care of yourselves, keep the receipts, keep the timelines, keep the honesty. See you in the next one, and see you ringside on August 15th with the wide-angle lens rolling.